Welcome to another segment of ACRP TV. Today, our spotlight is on ACRP's Diversity Advisory Council, something we're very excited about. We've been doing an ongoing series where we're speaking with many of the members, talking with them about their hopes and views and dreams of the council, what it might accomplish, and also to get a little bit more about their own background. We've got with us today another member, Pete Fronte, who's the president and CEO of Altura. Pete, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Michael. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great. So you and I have talked in the past, but for the crowd here, let's talk about how you got into this industry. There's so many different paths for how people got into the clinical research industry. I'd love to hear yours.
That's true. And actually, every time I talk to colleagues in the business for the last 30 years, it's always an intriguing discussion because everybody has a different path. And mostly it's serendipitous. And I know with ACRP and a lot of us on the Partners of Workforce, which Altura is one, and the Diversity Advisory Committee, it's about making sure people know about the industry earlier in their careers and to have that as an option. And for most of us, like myself, I ended up working for a life science company, a pharmaceutical company in the managed care division, working with large health systems. And during that time in my career, very early in my career, I was offered an opportunity in clinical research, working phase 2 and 3, because the need was to try to, back then in the mid 90s, get more access to patients, more providers, organized health systems. So I went into clinical research really not knowing what phase 1 or 2 and the consent was, and launched my career in clinical research. So that's how I kind of fell onto that path, and then went from life science company to site side to IRB, and touched all aspects of it, which really makes it very interesting for people looking at a variety of career paths.
You make such a good point. So many people I have talked to have sort of, you said serendipity, which is a nicer word for a lot of people tell me they blunder into this. They stumble into this industry. Now you mentioned the mid 90s, so you've obviously been in this industry for quite a long time. You obviously must kind of like it. What is so great about being in this industry?
Well, it's such a challenge, and it's hard. I mean, anybody in the industry knows, depending on what side you're on, and I don't care which side you're on, it's a difficult business in many ways. There's a lot of science happening. It moves quickly. There's a lot of regulations, but those same challenges are what's intellectually stimulating, right? And whether you're a clinical person, that's what's nice as a career path. You can be a business person, a project manager, an operations person, a finance person, a doctor, a nurse. There's something for you in clinical research. And I think that's what makes it interesting. We're working in areas like Alzheimer's or COPD or endocrinology or depression. You're learning something. And then there's different types of medications and interventions. And there's different phases, and whether it's an intervention in a phase 3 study, or now we're seeing a lot more on the kind of more of the observational studies, the health services related studies. So I think the challenge and keeping you on your toes, whether it's learning a new area or another type of research, is what's stimulating in this industry.
Absolutely. That really comes through when you're talking. So let's now talk a little bit about ACRP's Diversity Advisory Council. You also mentioned the PWA, the Partners in Workforce Advancement,
right,
which you guys were involved with too. Those are both two really important initiatives for us here at ACRP. But for our conversation, let's focus today a little bit on the Diversity Advisory Council. It's a little newer. I know you guys have had a few meetings, but talk about your hopes for that. What are your expectations for that group?
Right. Well, I think ACRP, first of all, the leadership at ACRP, you guys have done a great job thinking about expanding the workforce, but it must include diversity, right? And that's been our challenge. And even if you look at the makeup of clinical trials, right, we are underrepresenting minority groups in certain populations. And I think to better reflect an increase there, we're going to have more coordinators and research assistants and investigators that are of those underrepresented populations. And I think that's exactly what ACRP's Diversity Advisory Committee and Council are doing. We're coming up with resources, we're brainstorming, bringing different stakeholders together to understand what are the problems, what are the obstacles, and how do we make a change? And a change not only that is transactional short term, but how do we keep it long term? And how do we get people not only consider research as an industry, but make sure that we speak to certain underrepresented groups, which maybe we haven't really done well with that in the past.
Fantastic. Well, I want to bring you back on in a couple of months to talk about milestones you all have hit or where you are towards attaining them. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about what you all are doing. I've said it just a few times on some of these ACRP TV segments, but one of the things I'm personally excited about with this committee, with this council, the advisory council, is this is going beyond words. You guys are rolling up your sleeves and looking at doing things. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that as you make more progress. So I want to thank you so much for joining us, Pete.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
This has been our ACRP TV Spotlight on ACRP's Diversity Advisory Council. We've been speaking today with Pete Fronte, who's the president and CEO of Altura. Pete, again, thank you so much.
Thanks, Michael. Keep up the good work.